Hey, what's up, everybody? Import Jungle here. If you don't know who I am, maybe this is your first time watching. I was the jungler for Team No Names in Paragon. We were on the EU side, and we won PCL EU number 5, which was the last PCL that was actually relatively competitive. We won it against Toronto Esports, and I was, streaming a lot of Paragon. I was doing a lot of stuff near the end of the game's life, and pretty decent friends with people like Blood Mortius, Mikey, Shinx Talkflip. Played Smite with all those guys. Had a lot of different jungle conversations with people like IDOC, with Blood, and we talked a lot about the game theory and like things, reason why certain heroes were strong, why certain paths were good, etc. Reasons why a lot of things happened in Paragon. And so I heard that Core had their proof of concept yesterday, and I watched it, and I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things that are in this proof of concept. So I kind of wanted to share it because I feel like these things are really should be known. I just want to preface by saying that I think Core and or Metabuff and Sylphin have done like a really good job. And I've talked to Sylphin, I've talked to a couple other game designers, given my input on just general game philosophy, and I feel like that they've adapted pretty much everything that I could ask for. And I think philosophically, like it's perfect. They have they have the right ideas as to why they're doing certain things, but some things I feel like are just too much. And I'll get into it. And like I said, I really think that this should be said now, well before the game is actually playable. So yeah, we're just gonna watch it together, and I'll just be muting and letting the video run. I'll pause and then I'll interject. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoy.
Welcome to the third video in our proof of concept campaign for Core. In this video, we discuss Core's jungle and map objectives. Entering the jungle and moving between lanes is designed to give players more gameplay options. Core's jungle features 2 access.
All right, sorry, I should make a hotkey for that. But what I wanted to say is that I won't be commenting too much on the architecture, but I just want to say this now, just so I can get out of the way. Obviously, work in progress map, they want the offlane side in order to be more open and all this. Wonderful. One thing that I do kind of have an issue with is these ramps, which they show later, which you can see these little gray lines. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video. If not, you'll see them later. There's a lot of ramps and staircases up over into towers. I feel like there's too many. I feel like it's too much access into the towers. And I'm not sure if I would want them completely gone or if it's just less of them. I feel like there's just too many on the map. Like I don't know. I think there's too many at the very least. But yeah, I just wanted to interject that and put that there. I won't be commenting really at all on the architecture though. But yeah, just want to say that. Okay.
Points around each tower, along with elevated access paths above each tower and around the 2 major map objectives. The jungle has one central pathway called the river that splits the map in half horizontally. It provides players with a more neutral path when moving across the map. Basically, the jungle is designed to promote creative playmaking by giving players more options when in the jungle. While the jungles are mirror images of each other at the very moment, we do plan to design the off-lane jungle to be different from the dual lane jungles in the future. As the main late game map objective is on the off-lane side of the map, our intent is to make the off-lane jungle more open and spacious in order to give more space for massive late game team fights. We're exploring different ways through which the jungle can be made more dynamic and engaging for players. While we won't know for sure what the final features will be, let's go over what's on the slate for evaluation. One of the main features of the jungle are the jungle minions and their camps. We will be testing 15 different jungle minions that will make up 10 unique jungle camps, with each unit having their own special.
Okay, so I kind of cut him off a little bit there, but he ended with each unit having their own special ability. My first thought when I saw this was that 15 is like a lot. Like it's really a lot, and especially with all unique abilities. The funny thing about this, is that I feel like it's almost you don't need this in the jungle. It's not really like a slight, but you don't really like need this. In fact, like adding more layers into the camps like isn't necessarily what I would do in general or what I think is like good for the game. Reason being isn't just preference, it's more that after the first like roughly 5, 6, 7 minutes, it depends on the game, depends on itemization, depends on base values of camps and heroes, etc. After about the 5 or 6 minute mark, you never really do any jungle mechanics. So you think back in Paragon when you did minion tethering, which is essentially just kiting the camp, like going in like a almost like a V shape or like a U, whatever you want to say, and auto attacking. You never really did that past the first clear. Like realistically, the first clear is the one that is the most important and the one that actually needs like that you need to do things for it. Other than that, you kind of just destroy the camps, and I feel like that's how it should be. I don't feel like you should be a gardener. You're a jungler, you know. The first the jungle should feel dangerous on some level, but I don't think you need all of this in order to make it dangerous. I feel like this is kind of just like almost fluff. I feel like you could just have uh let's say 6 different camps. Their damage comes out differently. I think of League, I think of like Krugs, there's a big Krug, it does a lot of damage. There's a small Krug. When you kill the small Krug, it dissolves into two smaller Krugs, or like two small Krugs. We kill the big one, it dissolves into two mediums, which then goes into two more smalls. Like the damage just comes out differently. You think of raptors, there's a bunch of little small raptors, and there's a big raptor. So if you could hit a bunch by the small raptors, it starts adding up, and that's how the damage comes out. There's not any real amazing abilities. I don't think there really needs to be, but you can have it. I just don't think that there's necessarily a point because it all just dissolves after the first clear, anyways, or like I said, roughly the first 5 to 7 minutes. So yeah. We'll continue.
Abilities and mechanics. As a jungler, you'll need to make decisions when planning farming rotations, as each jungle camp will also be weak or strong against specific damage types. Essentially, there are 3 damage type groups: energy, physical, and neutral camps. Each jungle will have 1 energy, 1 physical, and 2 neutral spawn locations where...
So, again, I'm pretty bad at this, but I cut him off again. Something about spawn locations. I had a lot of confusion when I first heard this. So, from what I understand, a physical camp takes more damage from energy damage, and energy camps take more from physical. That's the way that I was told or explained, like, that this is how it works. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, I'm still mildly confused on some aspects. And neutral is just like, they take the same from both. Like, that's the idea. So the idea is that certain damage types are going to do more damage to certain camps, which is okay, I guess. It's interesting on some level, but then what he says next is that the camps are like, the camp spawns are random, or that there's like variance in the camp spawns. And that's where I kind of just like want to press the brakes. You cannot have inconsistency with camp spawns and then also make them stronger or weaker to certain different types of damage. Because what you will do is that you will choke the jungle as to what you can play and what you can't play. And this is if the system works. Because if it doesn't work and everything can just jungle, then all of this work that you've done in terms of like creating these specific resistances, adding these mechanics, doing all of this, it basically doesn't mean anything. But when you think about it, if people could just do it anyways. The whole point of it is that this is like the concept, and it's like it's going to work this way. And you can already see, if I'm like, let's say like a countess in the jungle, and let's say I don't get physical camps, and like the camps that I get are really, really bad for me. Like that completely messes up my entire game. And like that kind of variance is something that as a competitor, you can't really, it's something completely out of your hands, and it's something that is really frustrating to play with. So if, in theory, if I saw these changes if I saw these implemented and they were impactful, as in the system worked and you couldn't just ignore it, you had to play around it, the only way that you could ignore the variance of the camps is if you played a jungler with an incredibly high sustain or just really high damage. I'm looking at junglers like Chimera. I'm looking at junglers like Rampage. These junglers, they don't care if the camp takes longer and that you're going to take more damage because they can still sustain through it. And so I don't necessarily know if I just want my junglers to be Chimera and Rampage because we have this system. And it's not like I'm trying to like not slight in like the most that I can, but it's like it's a very big issue, and it's like it's really concerning in her to see that there's variance and then there's this along with abilities. So like certain camps are going to be better for like certain junglers, and it's just like, but you don't know if that camp's going to be up. Like that's really scary as a jungler to just go like, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's just like that this affects my entire game. Maybe this like camp takes 10 seconds longer to kill because I'm playing this jungler rather than this jungler. And then that completely that lets go of a kill in off lane. You know, I can't go kill off lane now. I can't go kill mid lane. That sounds incredibly frustrating and really concerning. So yeah, we'll continue.
Camps of the appropriate kind will randomly spawn. This means that junglers will rely on a camp having a weakness and resistance to damage types while at the same time adapting to randomized gameplay mechanics as minions spawn. One example of potential minions is a camp with 2 small and elusive melee creatures that can jump over heroes to reposition and dodge attacks, along with 2 ranged creatures that lob projectiles which can be dodged. Another camp we're testing has 2 melee units that attack and build up an ability that explodes when fully charged. These units will also give shields to another lethal ranged unit in the same camp while they're still alive. This means players will have to decide between bursting down either the more lethal unit or the units giving shields, depending on their hero's strengths and the situation in hand. Jungling in core will not entirely be an exclusive opportunity though, as a special mechanic will allow any player a chance to benefit from jungle minions. Jungle camps will spawn every 2 minutes. Players will have an opportunity to pull minions away from their spawn location to allow another jungle camp to spawn and stack. This mechanic can stack up to 2 camps in the same location and provide the player who did the stacking with an economy bonus when the camp is killed.
Okay, so let's talk about this as well. This is something else that really, how do I say it? This is obviously from Dota, where, you know, you leash camps or stack them so that your carry can get more farm. I don't play Dota that much, so I'm not well versed, but I know vaguely that this is from Dota, point being. So, I'm kind of going to, like, dial back just a tiny bit back to where, you know, he's talking about the specific camps, you know, a camp that can charge up and blow up, and then you have this, you know, and it's like, the idea is that people have to make choices, and that there's things that you can be better at than people, you know, you could farm better, and, like, you could, like, know the jungle better, and know your hero better, and all of this. This is what I mean by I love the philosophy, where, like, the idea is that there's all these things you can do better than somebody, which is the general mantra of, like, what I see in, like, the rest of the video, which I love, but this is, like, it's a little bit too much, is really all it is. I'll give you, like, a hypothetical situation, which it's, like, it probably will happen more often if the minion stacking, going back to that, if the minion stacking was actually implemented in-game and you were playing it. So you're playing jungle, and let's say you're playing, like, I'll put it in Paragon perspectives. Let's say you're playing ELO cap game. I'm talking, like, 1700 Diamond ELO or higher, and you get somebody who's a competitive support on your team. And let's just say that the way the meta evolves is that the support has to come back and has to leash camps at a certain time, maybe 5 to 10 seconds before the camp spawn. And he starts leashing the camps. Or maybe it's the mid laner, maybe it's like whoever. The point is it doesn't matter. Let's say that you're used to this type of game and that the metagame develops like this and this is like how it's supposed to play. Now, on one hand, that's another thing that you could just be better at people than. That's also an abusable time. You know that somebody's going to be preoccupied doing this, so you can make choices knowing that there's basically one less person on the map. There is, like, somewhat interesting play that you could get from this from, like, the highest level perspective. But in terms of an actual just playing matchmaking and just playing the game, I think it would be incredibly frustrating if you're playing with somebody who didn't know about this system and just didn't know about it, and he's playing support or he's playing mid or whatever. He doesn't know that this is what you have to do, and the other team's jungler has somebody who does. The other team's support leashes the camps. Yours doesn't. He now literally has double the farm on the map as opposed to you. I think that's an incredibly frustrating situation to look at, and you can't protect people from themselves, but I think it also creates like quite a strange and like toxic situation. You're basically asking people to like get upset about it, in a sense. This is almost like reminds me of Smite in a way, where it's like you have to farm together, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but Smite is a game that literally has zero variance, and that's the reason why like it's all about like splitting farm and like going from place to place. It's like everything's like predetermined. It's almost like a PvE in a sense. They're like it's so controlled in a sense that there's zero variance, and I think there's already like enough variance in the game. Like you don't need this minion stacking thing. While it is like interesting on some level, like I just don't. I think it creates really, really bad situations, and I feel like you could just not have it, and then you would never have that situation, and you might lose like a little bit of like somewhat competitive depth, but I don't think it's worth it for the actual just playing experience. There always has to be a balance, between like competitive and between just like the regular matchmaking. So yeah, we'll continue.
Potentially, the more your team can set up this jungle stacking, the more you and your jungler can get ahead, as long as you don't forget about your lanes. Another key jungle objective are the Jungle Guardians. These two units are bigger, stronger, healthier, and more rewarding. Jungle Guardians spawn every 4 minutes, even if there are other jungle minions in their camp, and will drop special hero buffs. The Zetchin Guardian grants movement speed and health regen only when in the jungle, while the Arcane Guardian spawns mana shards for the player to collect for mana and cooldown reduction. These two Guardian buffs, along with the jungle camps being weak to different damage types, shows our intent to have both basic attack heroes and ability-based heroes viable in the jungler role. This adds dynamic versatility to the match and to the draft lobby. Junglers and other heroes also have access to Ember Collectors in each quarter section.
I'm actually going to dial it back really quick. Sorry about this. Professional video maker, by the way.
On mana shards.
So these are basically the buffs they showed minimap. I'll just talk about what the buffs are, and then I'll go to the minimap, and then I'll come back. So Zetchin Guardian, basically green buff, gives move speed and sustain. Basically, I'm guessing HP 5. Well, I'm pretty sure that they said specifically in the jungle is what it gives, which are the move speed and in the jungle. Oh my god, in the jungle you get move speed and HP 5 is what I'm assuming, and it's only in the jungle. So whenever you go into the lanes, you lose the effectiveness of the buff, which is perfectly fine. I think it's a great buff actually. I think it makes a lot of sense. Arcane Guardian, provides mana and cooldown reduction. At first, I thought this was kind of like, I almost thought it was a little bit like dead. I was just like, why would you ever take this? But I thought about it. I was like, you never really had issues in Paragon with mana as a jungler because of river buffs. And I was like, if the river buffs are different, maybe they don't get mana now. Like then this is fine. At some point, both of these buffs are going to be passed on to like your carries anyways. Like your mid laner is probably going to get blue. Zetchin's probably going to go to your carry or to somebody, like, who knows? It depends on how it develops, but I think this is pretty good. I actually like the fact there are two relevant buffs that give actual real things. I think stealing blue buff from certain mid laners, if you can actually get access into the jungle, will be really big, probably, and I really like this. I really like the fact that, that the buffs are like this. And to the minimap, yeah, green and blue, if you didn't see. Okay, back to thing. I think we were here.
Junglers and other heroes also have access to Ember Collectors in each quarter section of the jungle. These collectors give the controlling team a steady source of income, plus a small bonus whenever activated or claimed for a player and their team. Players will stand on the Ember Collector's activation pad and channel the activation process until the collector is claimed or activated for their team. This grants the player and the rest of their team a small economy bonus. Players may also empower this bonus through a charging mechanic, where players will have to aim and activate various targets as they appear in random locations on the Amber Collector's charging face. Therefore, through mechanical skill and aim, players will be able to acquire and empower small economical advantages over the course of a match.
So, all jokes aside, I've never liked anything that really affects gold drip in this way. I really disliked Harvesters back in Legacy, and I even disliked Amberlink. I think anything that affects neutral gold drip, like, is really sus to me, to say the least. Like, it's just very, I just really don't like it. Unless it's like an actual objective, which you can argue that Harvesters are, but they're not. Like, the only example that I could really bring up is like Dawngate. It was a MOBA that shut down in February of 2015, I believe. It had shrines, which were circles on the map. You know, there were two on each side, and they were relatively easy access. You go kill these small workers and cap a point, and then, you know, you would affect gold drip, and it became like a relevant objective. But it wasn't like, since there were only a couple objectives in Dawngate, it was a legitimate objective. It was something you legitimately contested for. It wasn't just like, I'm a Harvester, I'm an Amberlink, I'm here, you know, and you have to like tend to me. I really disliked Amber just because you had to farm as a jungler to charge up the Amber, and then it spewed out, but that's like a whole different topic. Point is, never really been a fan of gold drip. I think the charging thing, I don't really understand why it's a thing, or like why it's there. I think it's honestly like quite strange, even mildly ridiculous, just how it is. I don't know. Like, you have to spend 10 seconds like clicking on little lines like it's a mini game. Obviously, I attributed it to playing Peggle, you know, like playing a Peggle mini game or something. Like, I can never really see a reason that this should ever really be in the game. I don't see what good it does. It doesn't really add another layer to the game. It's just kind of there, and you have to do it. Like, that's probably the worst part about it. You have to do it, and it's just not a fan. All right, continue.
One of the most important objectives found within the Jungle of Kor are beings of great power, called Remnants. These Remnants are 4 different units that randomly spawn, one at a time, starting in the early mid-game. The team that kills them gains a small but permanent buff. These buffs range from small movement speed increases, small health regeneration increases when struck in combat, gaining a damage over time effect when damaging enemy heroes, to buffing nearby allied minions' health and damage. These permanent buffs can stack when multiple remnants of the same type are killed during a match. However, due to their random spawning, the remnants will make each match of Kor a unique individual experience. Remnants are also very deadly and have unique abilities and combat mechanics that require multiple members of a team to coordinate a takedown. With only one way out but 3 ways in, teams will need to approach these objectives with caution, as fighting in the Remnant Pit will be high risk but also high reward.
So this is pretty much League of Legends Dragons ever since they reworked it, which is a system that pretty much, I would say, everybody's been using now, or everybody's been trying to adopt, which is, you know, you have a random buff in League. We have Elemental Drakes, you know, Infernal, Cloud, Mountain, and Ocean. You know, they all do different things, and that's cool. I feel like the buffs that he said are a little bit scary, you know, like extra minion damage and stuff. Like, that can actually create a really weird situation. Like, I'm not really sure how it is, like, or like how it's applicable. Is it only when you're around them? Is it just generally? And then there's a lot of things that can go into it, and a lot of like weird gameplay aspects, or like weird situations that can happen. Like, if your minions are just stronger and just naturally push, like what that does. That means like the enemies are going to get more farm. On another note, it means that they're always going to be pushed, but it's like at the bottom line, like they're just going to get more CS because your minions are just going to start barreling through theirs. So it creates like a really weird gameplay dynamic. But like I said, I don't know how applicable it is, or like not applicable, like how it really works. So I'm kind of curious. I think random spawning is a really bad idea. For like maybe I misunderstood, but it's like, you know, it gets spawned in different places. Like if it's the same place, just a different buff, like it's cool, like it's fine. It's different places with different buffs. I'm like, it's a little bit scary, but I'm assuming it's the same place. Like it must be the same place, right? But yeah, let's keep on going.
Of course, there is one objective in the jungle even more important than the remnants, and that's the Prime Guardian. Prime Guardian holds the ultimate power. Securing this power for your team can mean the difference between victory and defeat. It is a deadly objective that will require most members of your team to take down. There are 2 to 3 stages of the buffs that can come from killing the Prime Guardian. When eliminated, Prime Guardian first grants the Favor of the Asher buff to the team that killed it. This allows the team to recall to and regenerate a base faster.
So I know this isn't like the end of like the whole Prime Guardian thing, but I just want to, while this is up, I just kind of want to talk about it, the first part. So Prime Guardian, whenever you kill it, everybody gets Favor of the Asher. You know, that's everybody's, you get Baron Recall or whatever you want to call it. Regeneration at base and nearby minion health and damage. This is basically just Baron buff or OP buff as we all know it, except I don't think OP buff had empowered recall. This one, though, is quite interesting. Paragon of Agora. This is the person who picks up the orb. Yeah, this is the person who picks up the orb gets this. Increased mana and health regen when out of combat, and severely increased damage output. So, I'm curious as to actual numbers, as to how much. Is this percent damage? Is this just like 50 attack damage, 35 AP, like it is in League? It's probably not those numbers, but you get my point. Those exact numbers in League. But I'm curious as to how it is. If this is percentage, then I am screaming. Like actually screaming, but there's no way it can be. If it's just flat damage, it has to be relevant enough for you to actually just keep the orb. The problem I have with this, which like he talks about in a bit, is that you then dunk the orb in order to get the other buff, which then doubles the dragons, which works like Elder Dragon in League as well. One of these is probably going to be severely better than the other. There's probably going to be a situation where the Paragon of the Agora buff is just going to be better. So instead, you would probably... So you're either never going to dunk or you're either always going to dunk. That's like probably the only thing that I kind of dislike about this. But the actual concept is interesting. The fact that you can like have this orb and you can like choose who it goes on. You know? You could like just put it on your Sparrow, you know, and she has like all this extra damage output. Like I think that's kind of cool. But I think the dunking thing, like, I'm not really sold on it. It's just because, like I said, I feel like one of them's always going to be better. So it's like the other one's just, you know, depending on whatever reason, maybe the Paragon of Agora doesn't give you enough, or like maybe Fury gives you too much or too little. That's like my only concern. It's like the ideal world is like, oh, you know, in this composition with these remnants, like we dunk, you know, that's the ideal world. But that's a really hard place to get to. But maybe it's possible. I'm not sure. I think it's okay. Like, you know, it's good and bad in points. All right, continue.
While also buffing allied minions' health and damage that are nearby team members. It is ideal for pushing into enemy towers more quickly and gaining a siege advantage. Secondly, Prime Guardian drops something called Orb Prime upon death. Whoever picks up the orb will receive the Paragon of Agora buff. This individual gets increased health and mana regeneration alongside greatly increased damage output. Finally, the Paragon of Agora buff can be channeled into the Altar of the Remnants, which is found within the Remnant Pit. This removes the Paragon of Agora buff and instead activates the Fury of the Asher buff for all teammates. Fury of the Asher doubles the effectiveness of any Revenant buffs that they have accumulated over the match and gives every member of the team a small damage increase for a short time. This gives a choice to players between empowering one hero immensely or boosting every member on the team in smaller, more indirect ways. To recap, killing Prime Guardian grants a team-wide buff, and once you're carrying the Orb Prime, you can dunk its power in the Remnant Pit to share it with the rest of your team in a more different way. The choice is ultimately yours, as planning and executing various strategies involving the Remnants and Prime Guardian will be very important in securing victory in Core. We've made sure to design the jungle as not only a creative and dynamic space, but also as an evocative and emotional experience as well. The art style is intended to feel very much like an actual jungle that is ancient and mysterious. Vast vegetation lines the walls and forms a canopy over ruins, statues, and flowing water. Elevation in the jungle can take you into advantageous positions over towers and the Remnant and Prime Guardian pits, while also letting you ambush unsuspecting enemies that are securing their Ember Collectors. The size of jungle paths are meant to confine players into more vulnerable positions to provide different gameplay from the rest of the map. The jungle does, however, open up around Guardian camps and Ember Collectors to allow teams to have more space to fight around these key objectives. This concludes the jungle and map objectives reveal and overview video for Core. We hope you enjoyed and are looking forwards to learning more about the game. We will see you in 2 days.
Alright, so that is the whole video. I'm just gonna have some closing notes. Just some stuff I may have forgotten or just didn't really mention. Yeah, overall, it's okay, but like, if anybody from MetaBuff is actually watching or listening to this, please do not overcomplicate the jungle. It doesn't need it. We don't need variants in camps. Give us camps that are consistent. And you don't need all these mechanics in the camps. You can have some, but just have very little. You don't need a camp in order to jump over your head or things like that. Like, just make it simple, you know? Like, make it consistent. If what you really want is for a lot of things to be viable in the jungle and for you to have choices in draft, you need to have consistent factors. Otherwise, no one will ever take the risk in order to, like, actually choose other champions in the jungle that don't have sustain or whatever, or, like, who doesn't have, like, really high damage, like, with low mana costs or whatever the meta would develop into. I look forward to more stuff from Core. I'm actually interested to watch more of their videos. And, yeah, if you guys enjoyed this or have anything you want to comment about or just want to talk about, hit me up on Discord, in the comments, anything like that. Like I said, if you guys want to see more, let me know. I kind of just did this because someone told me that I should go and watch this. But it was pretty decent, you know? So yeah, I enjoyed it. Peace out, guys.